Queer as Folk was out back then. And I remember like watching it with the like Cartoon Network on the last channel button in case I heard my mom come down the stairs, and I could be like, I wasn't watching gay people on TV, no.
First I got your voicemail, then I got you. We can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do. I'd like to know the things that specifically make you.
Hey, I'm Tim Barnes, and you are The Genre. Each week, I ask awesome people about the first genres that inspired them, the first crafts they pursued, and what their relationships are to those crafts now. Comedian, TV writer, and former TV critic Ashley Ray joins me this episode. She hosts the popular TV I Say with Ashley Ray podcast, wrote for the Adult Swim series Alabama Jackson, and was selected as one of HBO Max's queer comics to watch for 2021. I was excited to talk to Ashley because, you know, creation and criticism are marketed as these two opposing cosmic forces of the entertainment industry. Is it possible to do both of those things successfully? And if so, do you become some sort of all-powerful avatar foretold by Hollywood prophecy? Ashley and I spoke in December of 2023, and in discussing the modern world of criticism, wound up anchoring our conversation around a controversial film review in Vulture titled "The Silence is the Loudest Part of Renaissance of Film." Remember that? Things got kind of crazy for that critic, unjustifiably so. But Ashley, who has a debut stand-up album titled Ice Cream Money set to release March 1st, isn't a stranger to controversy herself. And I wanted to know if there's a reason that she often finds herself at the center of an internet storm. Well, I am excited to talk to you because when I think of Ashley Ray, I think of a lot of different things.
What do you think? I'm curious.
No, it's just because your social media presence is so you, first of all. So you're the perfect person to talk about how someone becomes the own genre through the multitude of things that they do. But sometimes I wonder, like, it's like every month there's some sort of controversy about a tweet or something that Ashley Ray has done. And I always imagine you just like smoking a joint and just blowing some smoke out. You know, I'm going to start some right now. I feel like when you tweet something, you never know when it's going to start.
I literally never know. It is that I am smoking pot and then I go, man, you know what? God, I'm trying to think of like the last time someone got mad. It was probably something so stupid. I think the last one was like when that little Tay girl faked, like her family faked her death or something. I had no idea who she was and saw like, oh, she had died. I
don't even know what you're talking about.
She used to be a famous YouTuber and she like wasn't as famous, and her parents like faked her death to get her back in the newspaper. But as soon as it came out like on the Instagram that she was dead, people immediately were like, this is a hoax. Her parents have tried this before. Like, I doubt she's really dead. Like, here's how awful her parents are. They like used to make her say slurs. And I was just like, dang, this is a wild story. I went from not knowing who this girl is to being concerned to going back to just simply not caring. And I tweeted basically that, just like, I didn't know who she was. I cared, and then I didn't, and that was such a fast roller coaster of emotions. And people lost their shit. They were like, how dare you not care about this dead girl? I'm like, she's not dead, though. That's the whole point, is that she isn't. And then they're like, well, how dare you not care about a hoax? And I was like, why? I don't know who she is. Why? And all these people were just like, I can't believe you're celebrating the death of a child. And it's like, what? So I honestly never know it's gonna start. I guess this week people have been mad at me because I talked about polyamory, like, which to me is so boring to talk about. And there was people who were making fun of this like pregnant poly woman who was crying over her partner dating other people. And I was like, well, hey, you know, some poly pregnant women are chill with it, some aren't. I've dated some of them, I know. And people lost their and said that I was trying to destroy the fabric of America. So, yeah, I think people think it's more calculated than it is because they don't realize I don't care enough about Twitter to be calculated about anything on there.
Yeah, and that makes you wonder. I can't even
organize my TV reviews on Twitter. Like, what? Like, there are people get mad at me all the time because they're like, I wish you would just use a hashtag like Ashley Ray Rebecca Menz so I could easily find it, or just do, and I'm like, yeah, I don't care enough. You're gonna, or they're like, could you live tweet a show when it's happening? And I'm like, no, I'm gonna live tweet it at 2 a.m. when I'm watching it stoned. Like, sorry, that's, I wish it was
I got a life to live.
machine.
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting point to talk about criticism as well, because there's an article, I think it's on Vulture, about the new Beyonce film that is causing a big stir.
Big stir. They're sending death threats to the author, and Twitter seems to have blown up about it. I think the review, there were parts I disagreed with, parts that I liked. It was a fair criticism. It was one of those things I read that made me excited to talk about it with other people, which I think is what criticisms should try to achieve, is that you want to get the people talking. And I read it and I was like, yeah, I agree with this part. I disagree with this. I'm like in my group chats, like, can't believe this, da da da. But on Twitter, it just blew up, where people were accusing the author of hating all Black art because she had, come against this one piece and a few others. But that's not even, she's like also been such a champion for other Black projects. They said that she has a personal vendetta against Beyonce. They like started sending death threats. They've been trying to get the article taken down, which is like not how any of that works. Yeah. And to just see even like stans, I expect that from, when it's, I've made some jokes about Nicki Minaj. I've seen the backlash. I've lived it. So I know, she probably knew, the Beehive is going to come for me for putting this out. I don't think anyone thought like other journalists and writers and people would like level accusations of, you hate all Black artists and stuff like that. And I think that's a unfair thing that I've run into as a critic, because when you're a Black critic, there's this expectation that you'll uplift and support all Black art. And if you don't, you hate it, and you're, disparaging the people, and criticism between Black people should happen behind closed doors, not in front of everyone. So if you're a Black critic writing about Black stuff, there's this feeling towards you of, oh, see, you just want to like air our dirty laundry. And obviously, I don't think that's any of our intent.
Well, what stands out to me is that the person who wrote that article, I remember seeing her like at comedy shows and stuff in Chicago. And I don't think we really interacted so much when I was in Chicago.
Yeah, but I feel like we maybe met once or twice. Yeah.
Yeah, once or twice. Yeah, but Chicago is this hub of thought in a way. There's like all kind of, like so many critics there. There's so many famous interviewers there. So many comedians. It is just like, yeah.
And writers. And I feel like also in Chicago, it is very common for people to do everything or to do a lot of things. I would have friends who are like, yeah, I'm in a band and I freelance write for this place and I do this and I do comedy. And I was very used to that. I was like, yeah, I'm a critic and I write TV and I do comedy and, I do all these things. I enjoy it. I freelance and, also do profiles. And when I came to LA, that's when it was like, you have to choose a lane. Like, you can't do all the things. You can't be a critic and a creative. You can't be a comic and also criticize other comics. Even though to me it was like, what are you talking about? Like, I do open mics and I'm writing about like Tiffany Haddish. Like, I don't think we can say that I'm criticizing my peers. But then, how could I forget his name?
Was it the Gerard Carmichael?
Yes. Then Gerard Carmichael went on to the Breakfast Club and said I was his peer. He called me the Nicki Minaj of comedy to his Cardi B. And that's when I realized, oh, I guess I'm in a higher level than I had seen myself in.
Yeah, and this is something I think I'd love to explore later, because this is the stuff that I struggle with as well. But to figure out how Ashley Ray created the empire of Ashley, what was the first genre that drew you in?
Yeah, this is an interesting question, because when I tried to really think about it, all I could think about was gay. Like, my first thought was just gay. Like, the first sort of overall thing that I could pinpoint, like, there's a similarity between all these things that I like, and what it is gay. I'd say I was like 10, 11 years old, And I was just so interested in anything that seemed queer or like it was, behind closed doors or secretive. I think what it was is, we had cable in my house. So I would stay up like really late and watch stuff I wasn't supposed to be watching. Queer as Folk was out back then. And I remember like watching it with the like Cartoon Network on the last channel button in case I heard my mom come down the stairs and I could be like, I wasn't watching gay people on TV. No. And then like in sixth grade, I got a laptop because I went to a school where all kids got a laptop in sixth grade, which is a bad idea. Really bad idea. Whoever came up with that to give a bunch of sixth grade kids laptops and internet access. With really, this was like before people even knew how to put up like firewalls and blockers. Like I remember that wasn't a thing at my school until high school, and we were all just like, thanks for the like 5 years of just uninhibited internet access.
Yeah. There used to be like computer class. I feel like that's not a thing anymore. People just know how to use computers.
Yeah. We all got laptops. We had a computer class where we would like sit and he'd teach us how to like make PowerPoints and use Excel and stuff. And it was like, cool, like great.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm literally just on MySpace, like reformatting my profile, but cool.
Well, I remember, speaking of queer, potentially, I, loved movies, loved science fiction, loved the X-Men movies. So I typed in xmen.com. I don't know if I did it with a dash or without a dash, but it did not take me to an comic book website. It took me to a totally different meaning of X-Men, and I had to quickly shut it off. So that's the internet that we're talking about of our youth.
Yeah. And I had a live journal where I was part of like this live journal indie movie community where people would like upload illegal versions of movies. And I would really just like look at the cover of things and go, does this look interesting? Do I want to download it? And every time I would do that, I would always just end up downloading like the gayest movies. I did like Welcome to the Dollhouse, Swimming Pool, like Water for Chocolate, just like all of these like lesbian movies, Debs. But I'm a cheerleader, where I would just be like, something about this cover pulls me in, huh? And there's all of those movies cover different things. They talk about like coming out and being gay, but in very, very different ways. But that was sort of just like the overarching thing that would pull me into something. Like I knew I was going to watch The L Word because I was like, it's gay.
Well, what is or how do you define queer? And it's one of those words where I don't really know exactly what it means.
I guess for me, I use queer and gay a bit interchangeably, which I know some in the community do not. But for me, queer, I guess, is a bit broader in that it's a bit like that Supreme Court quote where it's like, I don't always know it when I don't always know it when I, no, wait.
Well, I would love a Supreme Court quote like that.
It's like, I don't always know like what's gay, but I know it when I see it. It's just like, I knew it when I saw it. Like when something was gay, it's queer. It's like, I would know it. I can feel it. Even if it's like a John Waters film that has a straight couple, it feels queer to me. And there was a community and campiness and language and genre that I saw all speaking to each other across these films that like pulled me in. And I think for me, queer can define that. It can define like the queer language and artistry that we as like a community use. It's like a shorthand, whereas gay, I think for some people, and for me, they're interchangeable, but I think for some people, gay is very much just means like a gay homosexual man.
Yeah.
And if you're a girl, you say lesbian. And if you, I think that is kind of how people are used to those terms, but they've like evolved to where, women call themselves gay, and it's like understood that can mean lesbian too, that there isn't this like hard line. But I think queer encompasses all of that. I think queer says, this can be of the trans part of the community, the lesbian part, the gay male part. All of it to me falls under the umbrella of like queer art.
Yeah, it's when I just think about the word itself, it feels like in a way it could just mean anything that's slightly askew from from a norm. Like, and then
Yeah.
it was like, oh wait, is Doctor Who queer? Is the Alien franchise queer?
I mean, there were a lot of people talking about Doctor Who being queer on Twitter. So they were like, he's definitely queer because he can, I guess, be like he can come back as like any form. So
yeah.
It's kind of, that's a little queer. And I think
That's
there is
queer.
like a queer way of creating art and viewing the world. There is a line in Renaissance, the album and the movie, where, you know, someone is like, it's the way that we talk, the way that we walk, it's the way we make love. It's just everything. And I think you sense it in other people and other things. And that was the genre that I just was most drawn to. Like, you know, even in like my real life neighborhoods and home, like if I get a sense like in a part of a community, you'll feel the queerness and you're like, something's drawing me.
It's like
here.
the force. Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, it's a gay bar with drag. Oh, okay.
So it feels like queer, like you recognized it and you're watching specifically queer shows secretly, but it still seems like it was a bit amorphous for you. Like, how were you starting to incorporate that into your life?
Yeah, I guess, you know, from pretty much around that time, at a young age, I knew that I was gay. When I was 12, my mom like tried to send me to conversion therapy at our church. It was not like the incredibly serious kind. We were poor. It was just like I would meet with my pastor's wife for like an hour before everyone else. And she would just kind of be like, so, you know, it's cool. Husbands.
Oh my goodness.
You into that?
Oh my!
And I would be like,
you know, that
really.
Makes me think of like, you know, church gossip too. It's like you're hanging out with the preacher's wife.
The preacher's wife, yeah.
Now, like, what is she gonna say? Like,
and she would just kind of like listen to me, and I would talk about my week. She was just like super nice, and you know, it wasn't like you have to change. Da da da. It was just kind of like, okay, are you sure about this? So that I think aided in my feeling of I'm interested in this genre because I think I am a part of this community. And it took me a while, you know, like in 6th grade, I started a gay straight alliance at my school and was adamant that I was the straight ally part. I was like, I'm just an ally, but I'm starting this club just in case any gay people, if there's any of you, if anyone needs it, if anyone, but I'm totally straight ally. But if anybody needs it, but like I remember I put up posters for the Gay Straight Alliance and my school wouldn't let me put them up on the first floor because our school was kindergarten through 12th grade, and kindergartens like K through 5th grade students use the first floor, and they were like, we don't want them to see a poster that says gay. And it was like 2002, and it's like they can't even see the word gay, and I was like, oh okay, this is like, why am I being oppressed?
Yeah.
That's how my like 7th, 6th grade mind thought. I was like, why I'm being like, people can't even see this word. That's how much power it has. And that's when I just really started to be like, this is something I don't like. There's power in this and being this thing that I am. And I started to more openly in life be like, yeah, I'm gay, I'm bisexual, I'm queer.
What was the first like official craft that you pursued?
Ooh, you know, I guess in high school, I always wanted to be a journalist. I always wanted to be like an international reporter and report on important news. And
That sounds like a great intro for a reporter before they ask a question. Hi, I'm an international reporter who reports on important news.
Who reports on important news? Thank you. And that's you know how I always saw myself, and I got like internships at my local papers, the Rockford Register Star, the Rock River Times, and I would mostly write about like gay people. I would write about there was like a local gay bar in our community that was like facing a lot of harassment, and I would write about stuff like that. I would also cover a lot of just cultural things and concerts. So I would write about bands, like local bands or bands like Warped Tour, and I would always just write about like the gay bands or the ones that like always were like had queer messaging. You know, I'd be like, hey guys, can I do a deep dive review of the new Tegan and Sarah album? You know. So I think even then, like my sort of eye for what was important in news and what I wanted to tell people about was always kind of queer focused. I remember probably would have been my freshman or sophomore year in high school. There was a kid in my class who got in trouble because he was giving another boy in our kiln room. And, obviously both students should get in trouble for doing something they shouldn't do in a kiln room. But instead, my school only really punished the guy who was giving the and the other guy just got like a few days suspension. The other guy got like 2 weeks. And and I was just like, this isn't fair. This is homophobic. Like, because, that the guy who did it is, known as gay and openly gay. He's being punished more and writing about it and just being really upset. And my school just being like, shut up. Like, no one cares.
Wow. So you were, yeah. Was there anything was like that directly influenced your interest in journalism and that type of thing? Was there like any like characters on television?
Yeah, I don't know. It's really weird because I think that was just what I saw as respectable, because honestly, I'd always loved comedy. Like, I knew I loved comedy and television, and I just kind of always was like, that isn't serious. You can't actually do that as a Black girl and like have a career and make money, because I really didn't see any until I like made like Maya Rudolph. That was the first, and I guess kind of Deborah Wilson on Mad TV, but it seemed like, I'm not going to be able to do this and have a career like a Mitch Hedberg or something. But in middle school, like at our talent shows, I would just like recreate stand-up bits. I would dress up as like Mitch Hedberg and just do Mitch Hedberg's set, like perfect, like an imitation. I would play like Flight of the Conchord songs. I used to like print out scripts of Weekend Update and make my friends like perform it with me. So I always knew that I loved comedy and writing and, writing creatively. But I think by the time I got to high school, I was kind of like, oh, you can't do that. Like, that's not a serious thing to do to make money. And, my mom wanted me to go to law school. And I was like, I have to, if I'm going to write, it has to be serious news.
I feel like I end up talking to a lot of comedians who had some sort of interest in law or some pressure to law before they started doing comedy.
Yeah,
it feels so
I think it's
now.
Our parents saying we're annoying or something.
So go be annoying for a greater good, potentially.
For a greater good, yeah. Because like when I went to college, I first semester like had originally signed up for pre-law as my major, and then I very quickly was like, no, thank you, please, I'm going to do English. And it wasn't until really my junior year of college that I started to go like, I don't think I want to do this. I want to write, but not in a serious way. I want to write about, I want to just like make queer art. I want to like create things and talk about things that are gay and talk about art and get people to talk about it. And that's really where I found criticism and just, started to develop my focus on pop culture. And really, I guess at that point, I had started to really narrow in on like Black television and the golden age of Black TV. And then I really started to just kind of personally study and write about the successes and failures of gay representation in Black TV shows.
Well, it feels like an interesting through line from that genre and your career path is that when you first started talking about queer, you were saying that you loved secrets. You love things that seemed like you shouldn't be looking at. And it feels like perhaps that was your beginning of starting to categorize things. Perhaps you felt the injustice of the fact that you had to hide the fact that you were watching the L Word from your mom. Does that ring true to you? Like this sort of like, did you have this impulse that from a young age?
Yeah, I think from a young age, I had this impulse of like, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. This is stuff I have to hide. Like, this isn't appropriate. It's not responsible. It's not respectable.
And talking about comedy and the Mitch Hedberg of it all, we're two, monotone Black people.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I think I also didn't really, I didn't see a path for myself after two things. the first black president has a pretty monotone voice. That was okay. The world is ready for a black guy.
They're ready for us. After all the damage Steve Urkel did. Finally.
And then, honestly, like seeing comedians like Ron Funches when he first appeared on Conan, seeing like this new space for weirder black comedians, which in a way you could you could connect that to queerness in some way, maybe, but a type of black comedian who doesn't fit the mold of a Steve Harvey or Chris Rock, people more like Eric Andre and that type of comedian. Were there similar things like that for you? Like, I imagine it wasn't normal to see a young black woman, pretending to be Mitch Hedberg when you were doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I never even really thought about it because to me it was just like, I love this, I love comedy, I love this, and no one ever was ever like, it's weird this black girl's like playing Fly the Conchord songs and super into this weird comedy. And like obsessed with Maria Bamford. And, it wasn't until I'm really trying to think, like, it wasn't until like definitely after I graduated college, really, maybe that I started to really see black female comics uplifted, and especially like queer, like, or not queer, but like just alt comedy people in that, like black women in that space, like Janelle James. But even all of those people feel like, so contemporary that like, I feel like I saw them coming up, like, within my adulthood and my childhood. It was just very like, yeah, oh, if you're a black woman who does comedy, like, oh, you do sketch or, you are doing improv. It wasn't like a stand-up writer thing. Although that's interesting because I was really into the King and Queens of Comedy. So
I mean, I actually don't know if I've ever watched the Queens of Comedy in full, but the Kings of Comedy is a very interesting cultural artifact.
Yeah,
especially the Bernie Mac set where he rides this line of kind of being homophobic about
And there's a lot of homophobic jokes in the Queens of Comedy. I think Monique has one, and then in her last special, she came out as bisexual. So I think that's so interesting. And I've actually been meaning to like revisit a lot of that era of comedy to really understand why, like, what, I mean, and obviously it's, you want to hide that, you want to, if you attack it, no one is going to accuse you of it. But I feel like if I went back and watched a lot of those like comic view sets and stuff, you would be like, yeah, that person's gay now. Especially from like black female comics. Because I think, like Whoopi came out as bisexual in the 90s, I think. But really, it's always like speculation. It's always like, maybe that black, no, but we don't talk about it. Like we didn't talk about how Raven-Symoné is gay, even though people kind of knew until she got
like
married.
Queen Latifah too.
Yeah, Queen Latifah.
Recently,
Niecy Nash. It's always just kind of like and then they get married when they're older, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, there is something about the outspoken unspokens when it comes to queerness and gayness, and thinking about like that Bernie Mac set from the Kings of Comedy. I guess what's interesting is that he is commenting on this gay nephew of his, but within that, it seems like Bernie Mac is saying like, yes, like this nephew just is gay. He's not saying a culture is like tricking him into being gay or anything like that. So even in how homophobic his set is, at least it feels like a sort of progress in that he's just like, yeah, this is my gay nephew wants his milk and cookies, basically.
Yeah.
Don't scroll away. You Are the Genre will be right back after the break. As of the release of this episode, which is independently produced, there are no real ads for me to read. So I'm just going to tell you about a few things that I've been enjoying. One is a little keyboard for your tablet. I recently got a little keyboard for my tablet, and it's a real game changer. I'm not sure why, but the words seem to flow better than they do on my laptop's keyboard. Perhaps it just feels like the closest modern equivalent to a typewriter. This flimsy little attachment allows me to transform my tablet into something greater. It feels like magic. Oh, And in addition to this podcast, I co-host another one called Yub Nub. It's a Star Wars-focused podcast where me, Jim Fagan, and Greg Iwinski have conversations that in the olden times would only take place in a comic book store. We just started recording and releasing episodes again, so give that a listen. Lastly, I finally got around to watching the 1990 film To Sleep with Anger. It filled me with nostalgia for an era of Los Angeles that's pretty much gone, I think. But more than that, it's a top-notch psychological thriller mixed with a family drama. I highly recommend watching it, and if you do, let me know what you think. Now, back to the episode. Where were we? In Chicago, you were being a critic and also doing comedy. What were the levels of that friction for you? Like you mentioned earlier this point in which you're like, okay, I've kind of tipped over the line where
I guess I guess I did. If that is what Gerard Carmichael says, I still feel like I send booking emails so I can do shows in backyards. So it's still hard for me to believe I'm not allowed to like review, like to write a criticism about someone like Monique when it's like we're not like, okay. But I guess I found that balance in Chicago because people didn't really care. I think because it's a scene where people aren't paying a lot of attention to you. You can like do weird things, you can write things, you can be honest about your opinions, and people aren't like, hey, an agent at UTA saw this. Nobody cares at Chicago. So I think that gave me a lot of freedom. But it also made me get used to things in a way that they don't work on the coast. That's not how it works in LA and New York. So I came to LA with like a lot of courage and just there was no filter. I didn't think I needed it. I was like, why? That's not how art gets made. That's not how we do things in Chicago. We say it, we're like, I disagree with this art. I don't like this play. We just write it. We just do it. And in LA, it's like, oh no, I said I didn't like Slave Play, and it literally turned into one of the biggest like things that like happened with slave play discourse, and I still to this day do not know why. But it was really different, and that's when people who I respect in the industry were like, you do have to choose a lane. This is a place where you're branding yourself, and you can't be a creative and someone who creatives are afraid is gonna publish a criticism about you. And again, I would say I don't feel that Jeremy O. Harris and I were peers. Like, again, that's a situation where I'm like, I'm like, so I've reviewed TV and like reality shows. Why do you care about my take on your play? Like, if the Tony Awards like it, that should probably make you happy. So again, I don't see it as me like taking shots at peers, but I think since everyone thinks everyone in Hollywood has the ambition to reach those levels, like everyone wants to be at that level of I'm a peer with Issa Rae. They see it as, well, you're gunning for my job, I think, or you're gunning for my position, versus, oh, this is just someone who has an appreciation for these genres and wants to write about it and talk about it. So I stopped doing TV criticism like in 2020. That's when I like officially like stopped reviewing comedy, stand-up comedy, TV shows, dramas, comedies. I just focused on writing about like reality TV. That was kind of my compromise because I didn't want to give it up. So I got really into writing about 90 Day Fiance in a super in-depth way. I was doing weekly reviews for like Vulture. I went to a documentary festival where they made 90 Day Fiance like a centerpiece of it and like hosted an episode and wrote a whole thing that went into what 90 Day Fiance means for the landscape of like reality TV. And then it just, even with that though, like even just switching completely to reality, just doing like occasional profiles, it still was like, well, no, you're still a journalist, not fully just a comedian.
You feel like that's a label that people were putting on you? Yeah.
And it was, to me, it was like, I don't really think you can call me a critic because I watch 90 Day Fiance and make jokes about it. But okay. But then I still was like doing, profiles of like Michaela Cole and all these people. So, I get and doing like cover stories of Blind Spotting. And so I get how it was a little like, well, how can you say you're just a creative when you could turn around and ask for an interview? So that was also part of why I started my podcast, TV I Say, because I wanted a place where I could talk about TV and talk about shows in a way that wasn't critical, in a way where it was just like, hey, this is me and Seth Rogen talking about 90 Day Fiance, and it's not a big deal. It's okay to just have opinions and talk about shows you love, and it's not going to tear this industry apart. It can come from a really just like loving and appreciative place.
It feels like a tough thing too, especially because everything is changing so quickly. And this divide, it feels like it's a dividing line of the camera, honestly. Like, even when I think about points in my life, like I remember I was a digital writer at Comedy Central, the brand Comedy Central. And I'm still like going to open mics and stuff. And I want to be, a comedian in front of the camera. Meanwhile, I'm in meetings where I see my peers on a PowerPoint presentation on the screen, and I'm literally witnessing the other side of it, where people are like talking about, should we cast this person or whatever, that kind of thing, and the weird duality of that. And for criticism, especially like comedy criticism, and being someone like, I know you have a new stand-up album coming out. These are two beasts that feed each other.
Yeah.
But there's a level of uncertainty on both sides. Like, everything on the technical side of writing, criticism, and being a journalist is so uncertain. Everything on the other end of being a comedian is so uncertain. It's not like you're guaranteed stability on either side. And so I feel like that's...
So it's like, there's no stability, so it's smart to be able to do all the things, because that's how you actually can feed yourself and make money. And that's how I have this whole time. Like, if I had just tried to do stand up, I'm sorry, like, I wouldn't make enough money. It's not like I'm a touring comic. I don't hit clubs regularly. Like, I'm not at that level. So to me, it was like, if I can support myself, like appreciating all the things I do and doing all this, why can't I? But even in preparation for like my album coming out, I was like, I talked to my team and was like, you're right. I can't keep being seen as someone who writes about culture and art when I'm creating culture and art. So I cut back on 90 Day Fiance, which I had kind of gotten so tired of writing about. I was just like, how many times can I say, I don't think she really loves him? So that was really a blessing, because it is still energy and a drain to kind of write it. You like have to put that mental like work into it. I really decided to just focus on the podcast as a way to talk to people in the industry about the shows we love, which got a little difficult during a strike because we couldn't talk about the things we loved. So we really had to find other like avenues of talking about like the history of TV and different genres. But I really just like put a lot of that stuff aside and have just focused on comedy and just doing the shows and performing and just doing that part of it. Like, I had 2 monthly shows that I was doing this year, and just it's kind of like, part of it makes me sad that when you get to that kind of next level of LA or New York, you have to narrow things down. I miss a lot of the freedom and openness of Chicago, but I also guess that just comes with these being higher stakes.
So it feels like you're severing ties in a way from criticism. I've even noticed in the intros to TV I Say that you say former TV critic.
Yeah.
Comedian, writer, former TV critic.
A phrase my manager really wanted me to put in there. And again, that also is, it's to let people know, like, if I'm talking about your show, it's not because I'm tearing it apart or telling people not to watch it, or I'm breaking some rule of not uplifting Black creatives. It really is like, we're talking about it because it's a thing to talk about in the culture, because I want people to talk about it and watch it and engage with it. And you can't ensure that like 100% of people are going to like what you do. But I've always thought, it's just a blessing for a lot of people to find the things you do, like, which is another, I think another reason why I can't really understand Twitter anger or criticism, because I'm just like, hey, whatever, guys, you're like 20,000 people who wanted to like a dumb tweet. What do I care? Like, you're just a bunch of people who feel a way about a thing you read. Like, I just put it there. Okay.
But I think it's interesting that you have like a solid fan base from the criticism arm of things that you do as well.
Yeah, a lot of
that feels pretty rare.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
people are I've like will come to my shows and be like, "I miss your criticism. Like, when do you think you'll do that again?" Or like, "I would love to see your take on this. Do you think you'd ever write about it?" And I don't know. I don't like I miss it in some parts. I miss real just like investigative deep dives into work and just how things are made and the like when something comes together. But I mean, also seeing like what that the girl who wrote that Renaissance Vulture piece is going through, I'm like, do I miss it that much? I'm sorry. Do I need to get death threats because I didn't like an episode of like Andor? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
It's
Oh my
scary out here
goodness.
today. So
Yeah.
sometimes I miss it, but I mean, I also feel a lot of issues with just freelancing and journalism as an industry when it comes to how they treat Black women, queer people. I just ran into so many issues with white editors that it constantly felt like I was fighting to be heard or to get my opinion out there or to just get them to see that I was making sense.
Mm.
I think it all started like I did. There was an editor who asked me to pitch to write about Atlanta when it first was premiering. And I watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes and had my pitch. And I was like, this is about an exploration of like the Black imagination and, how there can be Black shows that happen without consequence that are just about, the story and the journey. And the editor was like, no, that's totally wrong. Like someone gets shot in the first episode and it's a very serious look at Black male
Uh,
life and
yeah.
the like hard ways of living in Atlanta for these men. And I was just like, it's not. I was like, it's
Yeah.
about like Black male joy and friendship. And he was just like, no, it's about the gritty Atlanta. And I was like, I think you're just a white dude who needs it to be about that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he hired someone else to write it. And
Uh,
it's just like that happens so often that I get tired of having to explain myself to the people who are supposed to help me present my work to the world, don't even understand at a core like what the work is because they are so removed from like what a Black critic or Black art would be trying to say. So it's like I just got tired of trying to prove myself to my editors, trying to prove myself to an audience that like what I'm saying matters.
you're making me consider for the first time what it means to work in a space in which the goal is for you to have a well thought out opinion and present it to the world. And now I understand a little bit more like the friction with editors that people are typically talking about. It feels like a version of like a TV writers' room is
Yeah. Oh,
happening at all of these
yeah.
news
It's like you can have all
organizations.
these like Black writers in a writer's room, and then some white producer is like, I think this, and that's what people default to. And
Yeah.
I just got tired of it in the industry. It happened so many times. I worked on a piece on Southside about how it presented policing, and there was like a white editor who insisted like this is the kind of policing Black people want to see in television.
Oh.
And I was like, what? I was like, first of all, I don't think Black people dream of seeing policing in their TV at all. And you run into these types of arguments, and also that like doesn't really make editors like you because they want people who
Mm.
agree with them. So it just all kind of piled up to make me go, why am I even fighting so hard to do criticism when it's not even appreciated by the places I'm writing for because they're so white centered? I mean, I wrote TV reviews for the AV Club for years, and it took them like 4 or 5 years before they were finally like, do you want to write a film review? Because they'd only ever published 2 Black people in their
Oh
film
wow.
review section. Everything had been written by like white people. They only ever really covered white films. And it was when they needed someone to write about Da 5 Bloods that they were like, we need a Black person. Hey, Ashley.
Yeah.
And I got tired of that. Like I was just like, why do I only have to write about the Black stuff? Why? It just didn't seem very, it's just like, it wasn't bringing me joy. And it's like, why fight to do this when I can just do comedy?
And do you think that you've incorporated some elements of the things that you do in the critical lane into your stand up? Do you feel like stand up is like the perfect fusion of all the things that you want to
Yeah.
do?
Absolutely. Oh my God. I do stand up. I can go to an open mic, stand on a stage, say whatever about whatever. And nobody is like, she's tearing down the Black creative community and trying to get Blackish canceled because she said, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know, that tag in this scene wasn't that funny. Like,
Well, it feels like the power of like there's a weight to like words that are written down in an official space.
yeah.
That's different than talking on a
Than
stage.
talking on a stage, which I think took me a minute to really learn. Because for me, it was just kind of like, I don't know. I don't take everything I read that's written in print or in a review seriously. They're just people who write those things. But then I realized like how much power people put into, the printed word and just published stuff. And you don't feel that burden or heaviness with stand up. No one cares. Like, even if you record it and film it, you can put it on TikTok or whatever, and odds are like 60 people see it, like it, and no other people won't, and they won't care. It's just, there's so much video and so much content that it's like, who cares? I definitely have been very happy to just explore my art that way. But I guess that's kind of, it's just so great. And then I see Twitter as sort of an extension of that, where it's just like an open mic. It's just a place to try ideas. And I guess because it's written word, people freak out about it. And sometimes my tweets that get people angry are jokes I've been telling on stage for years that no one cares about. I'm like, really? This made people mad. I've been using this joke on stage for so long, and people just laugh and are like, ha. But then they read it on Twitter and lose their minds. And sometimes, but I'm like, you have the context of me being a comedian, and you should have the context of seeing a joke on Twitter before. So what is being lost here?
Well, I feel like it's a testament to your personality and what people love about your work. That I don't remember what you tweeted, but I remember your like Twitter deleted one of your old accounts, and I've seen you rebuild your fan base from scratch on there.
Yeah,
but it makes me wonder. How do you feel about it feels like Twitter could disappear any day now.
Oh, I hope it does. I don't give it. I didn't lose my first account. I deleted it on purpose.
Okay.
I literally was like, I hate this website. I'm sick of using it, and I'm going to get suspended so that I am not on it. And was just kind of like, blow it up, like this place. My old account, I think I had like 30,000 something followers. And so I tweeted a joke about, I pretended to be Donald Trump and like made fun of, he tweeted like, I won the election. And then I was like, oh, sorry, it's a typo. I meant to say erection. Not even a funny joke. I was like, this is lazy, but like, whatever, like send the suspension. And I thought I would just get suspended for like 2 weeks or a month, and then they would be like, yeah, change it back to get back in. But they permanently suspended my account. And I was like, okay, well, I wasn't expecting that, but like, fine. Yeah. I was happy. God, I was so happy. And then my managers were like, hey, you have to be on Twitter. We used your Twitter follows to get you jobs and things. And you have contracts to promote things on Twitter, and you have to be on there. And so you got to be on Twitter. And they made me start a new one. And then I rebuilt it. Although when I got my podcast back, Earwolf talked to someone at Twitter, and they did give me my old account back. So,
oh wow! So you're living the double Twitter life.
Yeah, I just turned it into the one for my podcast. So if you go to TV I Say Pod, it's the old The Ashley Ray account, and that's why it has like 30,000 followers.
Brilliant moves.
And people never seem to know this. I literally had to write an article detailing all of this because so many people thought I unfollowed them on Twitter were like, why did you unfollow me? I thought we were friends. And I literally had to write an explanation of how, and that's why I just, please let the site die, because I need people to not care this much about it. Why why did I have to write that? But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm grateful for some things Twitter brought in my life. It's the reason I got to interview Seth Rogen, and Roxane Gay. So that was good.
Well, it feels like a nice positive note to end this podcast on. This has been a really great time, and I think a lot of people are going to get some great stuff out of it. And I'd love to have you back on to talk about genre some more, specifically, hopefully, at some point to talk about how so many like TV and media genres are fusing together. I want to know some of your theories about that.
I have a lot to say about that. Genres these days.
Want more from Ashley Ray? Check out her TV I Say podcast, or purchase her stand-up album, Ice Cream Money, on March 1st. Freddie Nunez created this theme song, and Adam Smith produced it. Comedy writer Mike Sachs joins me next week, but if you become a paid subscriber to my newsletter, you can listen to it a week ahead of the normies. This is Tim Barnes signing off with your weekly reminder that you, yes you, are the genre.
First I got your voicemail, then I got you. But we can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do? I'd like to know the things that specifically make you